Hi, this will be on arena figures or school figures. That sounds really dry at first, but when we have a little closer look at what they really are and what they are good for, it makes much more sense to why we're actually doing it. So what arena figures or school figures actually are different kinds of patterns or shapes that you're riding with your horse. And the idea is that you have a plan of where you're going. You know when to bend your horse, when to get it straight. So it actually really helps you to structure your training as well. Right? Sometimes we go into the arena, we've got like half hour or an hour to spare, and then there's this big arena and a chunk of time, and we don't really know what to do with it and how to train our horses efficiently. And arena figures can really help us do that. I'll give you an example. So let's say you want to work on circles, and you start with working on circles, small circles, 10-meter circles in the corners. And you would start to the better side. By the way, you would always want to start to the better side. That's easier for you and your horse. And maybe start at a walk after a little initial warm-up. And then you do a few minutes of, let's say, going to the left. And then when you feel, okay, you've got something of it, it starts working and it feels good, then you change direction, maybe give yourself and your horse a break, and then you do it going the other way, give yourself another break, and then you pick up the trot, do the same thing at a trot both ways. So this way you have a plan. Your horse is probably more willing to follow you and listen because they know you have a plan, there's actually something to achieve. As a side note, what's really important about that is to not practice it endlessly and not necessarily say like, okay, we've got 4 quarters, so we'll make 4 circles. But if you really had a really nice circle where you feel like, oh, this is really what I was aiming for, don't do it again. You change direction, go the other way, and do it, whatever, 2, 3, 4 times going the other direction. So really reward yourself and your horse for things that have worked well. Good, that was a side note. Now let's actually dive into the different kinds of patterns that we can ride in the arena. So I'm going to throw a few patterns at you, a few school figures. Some of them you will be familiar with. It will be a lot of information, so it's probably a good idea to pick one of them, start practicing them, and then come back, watch that video again after a couple of days, and pick another one that you want to practice. So bear with me, it's going to be a lot of information. Let's start with circles. So, and we've talked about that in our straightness clinic, right? Straightness of the horse, how important circles are, and how they can really help you get your horse balanced. For that, the circle really needs to be round, right? So round would mean, and you can see I've started drawing that little arena here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too. But round would be, now bear with me because I'm not that good at drawing circles. Okay, kind of. Okay, kind of round. I hope you'll write that better than I draw it. But you get the idea. You want something, let me see if I can get it. See if I do it a couple of times, it might actually end up being a little round. That's actually what happens with us in writing too, right? When we get the idea, we get more into it, and it actually becomes a circle. At a circle, what happens very easily is the horses and we want to ride into the corner. The horses fall over into that corner, and we oftentimes want to cut this one short, right? So instead of, let me actually take the red one here. Instead of riding our circle, we ride something like this, right? Where someone said that's more like a toast, right? You ride into the corners and then you cut this short. So you end up riding a toast instead of a circle. So what's not good about the red line, right? When we follow that red line, we've lost balance here a couple of times. The horse probably popped a shoulder here, drifting to its outside. Here it was falling in. So we're kind of losing our balance all the time. On a circle, if we want to do it properly, we really have to see, okay, there's the corner, but I don't want to go into that corner, so I need my outside aids. to keep my horse from falling in. I need my inside aids. I have to take my time leaving the track here. So I really have to be prepared for leading my horse on that circle. So just the kind of awareness that creates, and the nice kind of balance your horse can actually get into when you actually find that circle, makes such a huge difference. I've seen horses really being on the bit and using their backs by people just finding, the riders just finding a proper circle. So I promise you, if you get it right, it will really make a difference for your riding and for your horse. Okay, before I go any deeper into circles, let me just talk a little bit about the arena itself. I've chosen a 20 meter times 40 meter arena, right? So that would be like 60 feet and 120 feet, right? That is a small but standard arena. Most American arenas are bigger. Get a sense of the size of your arena. So actually go ahead and measure it. It's nice if you have twice the length than you have the width, because then it's easier to fit your patterns in there. When they're really big, you have to become a little bit creative how to use how to fit your patterns into the arena. And I will encourage you to actually walk all these patterns, really go on foot. You walk them yourself without your horse, and also make sure that you know the measurements of your arena. It just gives you a better sense of where you are when you've actually walked it on foot. And we need a little bit of understanding of shapes and orientation, basically. Orientation in the arena in order to lead our horses, because that's what we want to do, right? And then you've got the letters here. I'll just briefly say something about those. So they actually come from the courtyards earlier, where M was for the marshal's position, all of that. So that's just a fun kind of background fact. But I mean, that doesn't really matter so much. The positioning matters more, because the positioning here, and I will talk meters now, so when you think of meter, when I say meter, think of a very big step that you're taking. So that makes it a little bit easier to measure these things. When you just really take, a meter is a little bit more than a yard, so you think of a really, really big step that you take, and that way you get an idea of where you are in the arena. Good. So these here are 6 meters from the corner. I will tell you later why that is important. The circle point is 10 meters from the corner. And this is, of course, half of the length. I said it's 40 meters altogether, the entire length here, times 20. Right, so this, of course, has to be 10 meters, because this would be 10 meters too, this would be 10 meters too, this would, okay, it's not in the center, about here, 10 meters, X in the center, 10 meters as well. And then when you connect these 10 meter circle points, they're actually really called circle points, these. When you connect those, then you end up on a nice circle. Yeah, so instead of, you kind of forget the corners. You really think of connecting the circle points. You can help yourself by placing cones on the inside, right here, so that you're actually riding from one circle point / cone to the other, so that you actually get an idea of where you are. Remember, we also did that little exercise where we actually wrote straight lines between the cones like that, right? That's not an official pattern or school figure. It's something that I came up with because I wanted people to understand where the circle points are and where we're actually heading for. When you start writing this, then it's easier for you to get an idea of where the circle actually is. Right? And you can keep practicing that. That's really a nice exercise anyways, that little diamond shape. that you can write. It's just not an official pattern. Okay, very good. So this would be a 20-meter circle. And now we've got all kinds of circles. We could have smaller circles. So let me get, black is good. 10-meter circles, for instance. 10-meter circles will always kind of reach the center line. So we'll think of the center line here. Ooh, okay, now me and drawing. Okay. Center line. So if you wanted to write a 10-meter circle, you could basically start it wherever you wanted. I oftentimes like to start in the corners, because when you come along here and then you write your little circle here in that corner and then you go straight again, it gives you a little bit of support. The corner gives you a bit of support. And I hope you're writing your circles better than I draw them, as I said. So, okay, so you have that little circle. You could do that wherever you wanted. It oftentimes is a good idea to start next to one of these points. Because then you know, and when I say start, or when I say be next to the point, it always means the writer's leg is next to the letter, right? So that's when you start going on to your circle and you come back. So it's a little bit of an orientation point. You could do that here as well, when you feel, okay, my leg is here, then I start leading my horse into the circle and back. Good. And oftentimes what happens with circles too is, with the smaller circles, the first half might be fine, and then your horse wants to fall in, right? And we come back like this, and we lose our circles. You can then think of, okay, you want to write the first half of the circle, and then think of starting again as if you wanted to write another half circle, oops, here, right? So you think more of two half circles than one big circle, right? So it's sometimes easier to kind of restart right here at the center point. Play with that, you'll see how that works. Good. Circles can also be used to change direction. So let's say you're coming down that road here, and then you write a half circle, and then you'll change direction this way. Yeah, so it ends up being a teardrop. And you can see, this one I actually did quite nicely, and you can see how this is like the half circle. It's the same thing as here. It is like a half circle. You want to go to the C, and then you want to slowly go back towards the E. Another important piece about this, when you really follow these arena figures, you have a much better chance to really keep your horse balanced, because you give them enough time. Oftentimes when I tell people, reverse direction or write a teardrop, they end up writing something like this. Right? Far too small, allowing the horse to fall in, the horse cannot really stay balanced, and the horse doesn't really know what to do. Right? So really allowing yourself and your horse to take that time to make a really nice turn. That's what arena figures are about. Okay, very good. So we've got the basic ones: circle, small 20-meter circle, 10-meter circle, reversing direction. I want to draw one more in here, which is more an advanced one, before I go into the other ones. So more advanced one. I hope you can still see when I draw it in here. So let's say we are on our big circle here, 20 meter, whoosh, and then we're still, that's how we're following that circle for a while, and then from here we will add a 10-meter circle to the right, and then we go back onto our circle. So we're creating a figure of 8, but not very even figure of 8. My instructor, who showed me this one years ago, he said it's the teacup, right? We are writing something like a teacup. This is a beautiful exercise because you can again start the easier side first, and in this case it would be like when we go this way to the left, the easier would have to be the right, because that's the smaller circle and the harder thing for your horse to do. Right? So let's say your horse is better at bending to the right, you would want to start to the left. Good. So then we start to the left, and then you have to change direction here really gently to bend them more going this way. Placing cones again can be a good idea to help you. You can add in transitions. You can, for instance, walk this piece here and then start trotting here. Right, that half circle at a trot, another transition back to walk, and then you do this at a walk again, pick up the trot again here. You'll see it's quite challenging. It looks easier than it actually is. And you could of course do the same thing at trot and canter. Like do this part at a trot, and then pick up the canter here, canter half circle, back to a trot. Right? The one that you might be familiar with is the big figure of 8. Right, that's like this one. Whoops. Okay. Right, so where you can change direction often and or just once. Yeah, that's a very flexible one. You can just use that as much as you like. But really look at how much that really are. These are 2 circles, right? Meeting in the center. Okay, I think I've drawn enough circles on this one. Let me talk a little bit about straight lines. So I need a little arena. Okay, crooked arena. Okay, about this. Straight lines. For straight lines, we actually have to put a couple of things together. We have to make sure that we get the turns right before we're actually going onto that straight line. I'll give you an example with riding along the center line. So this would be the center line. Getting onto this center line is the important piece. So think of this as a half circle again. Remember all these half circles that we were talking about? Half circle, and then you catch the center line. You're right along the center line, then you can either go this way or go the other way. But again, it's a half circle, and make up your mind early enough where you actually want to go. So to not surprise your horses, get ready, have them flexed, remember, like center and grow, have them under you, keep them straight, but have your plan. Remember the square dance, right? So you can put all the little pieces together that we've been working on. So have a plan, know where you're going. Good. This is the center line. The same is true for the diagonal. Let's say I want to change direction across the diagonal. And now I'm coming back to these letters here. Yeah. Why are they 6 meters from the corner? They're 6 meters from the corner. Why are they not here? Like sometimes I ask people to change direction across the diagonal, and then they end up turning like in this corner like this, and then actually riding into that corner, and like that. And just from me drawing it, you can see that, oh, I totally lost the diagonal. This is probably likely to happen to you too. But this and this would get your horse totally out of balance. That's the kind of turn that would require a lot of collection. So your horse could do it, but you would have to have it really collected. So in order to make it easier for your horse, we have the time to really ride through that corner nicely, straighten your horse out here, and then turn onto the diagonal again when your knee is level with that letter. Right? So you're giving your horse the chance again to find his balance in these turns and on the straight line. On the straight line, make sure that you're riding forward enough so that that doesn't get too wobbly. When we ride too slowly on straight lines, it's like a bicycle that you ride too slowly, it'll become more wobbly. So straight line, then you're heading for, you see, that's the M here. You're heading for this and planning that your knee actually touches this again. Right? That sounds like really like nitty-gritty, I know, and yeah, I mean, you can tell I'm fascinated by it, but probably not everybody is. But when you really think of balancing on fine-tuning the communication with your horse, and you want to make sure that you're actually getting there, and that's quite a big deal. It's quite a lot of communication with your horse required. And then if you feel, okay, it's really hard to do, it's very, you can easily just make that turn a little bigger and make that turn a little bit bigger, but do not make it shorter. So really take your time feeling your horse's balance, give them the time to turn properly, and it's these arena figures just help you really find out if you are in balance, if you're prepared, if your horse is prepared. Okay, what else do we have? We have, oh god, we have so many more, many more. You could also change direction across the short diagonal, which is you would be heading for this one. Good. This one, or actually both of them, you can just do once, just to change direction. Or you can ride it a couple of times, where you, especially this changing direction across the short diagonal, you can just keep doing this for just a couple of times where you keep changing direction like that. And you have to really, again, feel your horse in that. Okay, good. We have a few more. We have serpentines along the long side. Serpentine with one loop. You would go into that corner, you would leave the track here at the K, you would come in like this and then go back like this. Right? Okay, this here would be 5 meters, so just a quarter of your arena that you come in. Right? Some people, and actually in some of the dressage tests too, you can go all the way to the center line and back. So it's kind of up to you, but really decide before you do it where you want to go, basically. Right? So do you want to meet the quarter line or do you want to meet the center line here? Good. Here you have to change the flexion of your horse. So you have your horse flexed and bent to the right. Then you have it straight for a short moment, changing the flexion to the left. Again, a moment of straightness, changing direction to the right. Yeah, so that is actually something where the horses really need to shift their balance too. Again, place cones, right? You could place cones like this to help you find that. Good. If you want to ride 2 loops, that's actually more advanced, much more advanced. If you have just 40 meters here, if it's really a small arena, and you want to get 2 loops in, at a walk it's still okay. At a trot you'd be surprised how much collection you need for that kind of simple little loop. So you would actually only come in a little bit, go back to the track, and go back in here. Right? So it would even be just 2, this is even too big here. It would even just be 2.5 meters, very flat. But if you practice that, you'll feel how quickly you need to change the flexion. When I first wrote this at a collected trot, our camera was already on strike because it said this is far too long and far too complicated. You might be at the same place right now. So as I said, really make sure that you pick one of these, practice them, come back to this video often because I know this is kind of overwhelming. There's so many things to do. But I still want to give you all the information so that you have something to come back to. So what I was just talking about was the double serpentine here along the long side. And you can add something to this to make it even more challenging. And this requires, if you want to do it at a walk, that's fine. At a trot, it requires a horse that's already ready to collect some. You can add our 10-meter circles to the serpentine. So you would start, let's say you come here, and you ride your 10-meter circle, and you'll ride the first loop, and then you can even add another circle here, ride the second loop, and ride another circle here, and then go. Right? So this is not an official pattern again, you know, it's something that I've learned through the years, where when you really want to work on collection and focus of yourself and your horse, this is a beautiful exercise. And you don't have to do that often, like do it 2 or 3 times each side. And that's plenty. It's really a lot for the horses and for the people as well. Good. And then you can, of course, all kinds of fun patterns that you can do as well. Let me just take a moment if I have the basic ones here. I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, then you can just have some fun patterns that you come up with yourself. So let me actually take a new sheet for that. So you can be creative. Just keep in mind what all these patterns have in common. They have in common that they allow your horses enough time for the turns and bends, and yourself as well. That there is no sharp turn. If you're doing it right, your horses are not going to fall in. You know, there's lots of times when you just get them really straight, or you give them chance to bend. So keep that in mind when you make up your own things and your own patterns. I love working with cones, so you could of course place as many cones as you like, and can, for instance, just place them along the center line. If you use cones, let's say, I'll just place a few cones right here. Use an uneven number, because this way, when you come around the corner, you can just go around here. Right, and so it's a little bit like it's basically like the double serpentine that I just showed you. So you can use that really easily, but use an uneven number. Right, with 5 numbers you can start on the outside and and end on the outside as well. Right, so that will, again, you can even when you're drawing it or when you're walking it, you will feel which ones really work, because they give you and your horse enough time. Now I'm realizing I forgot one of the big serpentines, the big loops across the arena, which is a really nice pattern as well. Let's say I want to have 4 loops. So I'll have like half a circle here, 10-meter circle, straight line, half a circle, straight line, half a circle, straight line, half a circle, straight line. That's again one of the official ones. Right, so you have a straight line in between here, and then you think of half circles here. Right, and you can, like 4 loops is usually nice, but you can of course go 3 loops or something. 4 loops are easier to decide where you're going, because you have the points, the arena points, the letters there. If your arena does not have letters, choose something else, like choose a pillar, choose a fence post, choose a tree, choose something that you make your point, your circle point of your letter, right? So you can always measure that up as well. Yeah, and then you could, there is the old-fashioned way of writing this, for instance, used to be like this, right? That's the way, when I grew up, this was the way we were writing it. So we were bending and changing the bend here. Play with that. It's an interesting pattern as well. It's not in the official alliances anymore. Then another official one. Circle. And like a yin-yang sign. This is actually really an official one again. You go through here, a little bit of center line, and back here. Yeah. So you start with your circle. You again think of a 10-meter circle. Center line, another 10-meter circle. This pattern, I oftentimes see people write it like this, which can be fine too. If it's your own, like you made this up and you want to try this, you can see it's still a nice shape, so that can still work too. The official one though is smaller than that. Right, and then you can, with placing cones, you can start. You can even do lateral work. You know, let's say you walk around here, and then you take a few steps, leg yield over here, and then you go straight again, leg yield this way, straight again, leg yield, and so on, right? So there is really no limit in what you can come up with. The only things, as I said, is always make sure that they are smooth patterns, that the horse has a chance to follow you, and that you know what you're doing. Okay, that's basically it. I know that was a lot of information. Play with it. Thank you.